Well, Nicolas Cage got to check this off his bucket list. Uh, we're here to talk about Renfield and why Shoya Dashlu continues to show up in the weirdest and smallest and shittiest roles despite being an Academy Award nominee. We have got to get her better work. Can we please remember this lady was phenomenal in The House of Sand and Fog and give her better things to do than background work. She's basically doing background work at this point. This is Nicolas Cage playing Dracula, which is, as many people have in the industry know, has long been his wish. There's been like, he wanted to play Dracula and he wanted to play Superman. Those are like the two roles. So he's having a great year, basically. 2023 is Nicolas Cage's year. He is living in 2023. Of course, he's earned it. He started to do better films. He's still not consistent. We still have to get him out of shitty films like The Old Way, and we have to get him back into good films. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent was a great use of Nicolas Cage. Renfield is a great use of Nicolas Cage. This is directed by Chris McKay, who last directed The Tomorrow War. But if you're wondering why this style of humor and horror comedy works so well, I will say this guy was also comes out of Robot Chicken. When I looked him up on IMDb, I was like, oh, Lego Batman movie. Well, that makes more sense. And then I saw Robot Chicken. I was like, oh, we're making this guy's the perfect choice for this film. It's a horror comedy, and it's over the top, gory and silly, and it's not really made to be taken seriously. So the times that it wants to be taken seriously is just very odd. Tonally, it kind of takes you out of it. But we have Nicholas Hoult, and he's doing his best with his role. He plays, Dracula's familiar, Renfield, who has been imbued with powers. He's immortal, and while Dracula needs blood to survive, Renfield eats bugs, and he gets his powers and his strength from eating bugs. I don't know how book accurate that is. I just feel like I've never seen it before. So it's kind of weird because he has to carry around like a jar of bugs whenever he needs to level up. He's sort of like Popeye, but gross. And then we got Awkwafina, who's roped in here because why not? She plays a cop in New Orleans because if there's one city that I think about where Awkwafina makes sense to live in, it's New Orleans. And there's crime, and she's the one good cop. She's the one uncorruptible cop in the police force, and of course she's trying to avenge her father's death. Her father was a cop, and she followed her father into the police force, and she's looking for revenge. So it's the same plot we've seen like 1,000 times. It's for some reason just like wrapped around a Dracula movie. It's basically the night agent with Dracula. Like it's very unnecessary in terms of. I think this movie would have been fine if Awkwafina and the entire storyline around her wasn't in the film, and they had just done sort of this relationship between Dracula and Renfield that was just like this back and forth parasitical relationship where Renfield is, he kind of needs Cage, he kind of needs Dracula to, at certain times to heal him, because Dracula's blood also heals Renfield when he gets wounded. Even though he doesn't seem to die, there doesn't really seem to be like an exposure to Renfield. I don't he's at one point in the movie he gets gutted, and he's gutted for a while, and it's like Um, just waiting for him to heal is like, are you good, bro? Like, are you gonna make it? Well, the film thinks you're gonna make it, so most people would have fallen over and passed out, but he keeps kind of like fighting. Like, I guess he just has to hold it in. Like, his greater fear is that things are gonna fall out rather than, I don't really understand his immortality. It's kind of vague about it. But yeah, that dynamic is really cool, and it was fun to see him go to a support group and to learn how to get away from narcissistic personalities. There's a lot of humor in the film that's explored that makes this film really watchable. And for people who were hoping for this film to live up to some sort of horror comedy expectation, it's gory. I mean, the audio description here is fantastic. It's everybody. A lot of people die in just ridiculous ways. Like, they just kind of explode. There's a head that gets just like knocked off and it like flies out of a building and like rolls into the street and hits a car. It's just so over the top. It's just it's so over the top. That it's not meant to be scary. Like, it's gory, but it's kind of like, if I had to introduce my kid to something that was violent, I would probably start with this before letting them see an actual scary, like a movie that's meant to be scary. You know what I'm saying? Like, the kind of gore that is meant to give you nightmares. This feels like the kind of gore, like a Tucker and Dale versus Evil kind of gore. This is not Idle Hands. That's a deep cut from back in the day. There's another movie for you that had some gore, but it wasn't meant to give you nightmares. It was just kind of meant to make you laugh. So, yeah, sometimes they'd pull it off, and this one feels like that's exactly what it's going for. When you start attacking people with the limb that you just cut off of somebody else, it gets kind of, it's silly. It's silly fun, and I think Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult both did really good work here. I actually don't mind Awkwafina here. Sometimes I mind Awkwafina, and she comes in like a wrecking ball sometimes for me, and she can tonally throw off a movie. It's not that she throws off the movie, it's that her plot is just unnecessary. There's this whole weird crime boss thing, and the film doesn't really know what to do with it. The film Dracula touches lightly on the fact that he needs blood of the innocent is what actually heals him, not blood of the corrupt. But Renfield keeps feeding him bad guys. He's trying to do a good thing by getting bad guys off the street and feeding them to Dracula, which keeps Dracula sort of like alive, but not at like full power. And then at some point the film just kind of says, fuck it. And he gets to full power, and it's like, how did you get to full power? You're being fed shitty people. Like, where did you get fed an innocent? It just, like, some of that stuff, it doesn't even really make sense. Like, it's not a perfect film. Just like The Tomorrow War was not a perfect film. It had like a great concept, but it just didn't quite stick the landing. Renfield kind of does that too. Renfield is like, oh my god, this is really interesting, but at the same time you're looking at it and you're going, it's just like, there's a lot of that. It's just like, I don't know about that. It's also got Ben Schwartz, who you may know as the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. He's in this too. He has a sizable role, I would say, along with Shoya Daslu, who, again, she's an Academy Award nominee. Can we please find her appropriate roles? At least Hayam Abbas is on Succession, so she's actually getting to act. I feel like Shoya gets thrown into the weirdest, shitty supporting roles. I remember seeing her in the X-Men franchise. She plays a doctor for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, this woman has an Oscar nomination? Why? Why is she in this role? yeah, it's a funny film. I think people will like it. I think you'll like it. It's not great. It's not perfect. I look at the Metacritic score, and I think the Metacritic score is a little disappointing because I think if you can't have fun with a film that is trying to be fun, and you're just going to grade it on all of the mistakes that it made, and you can't accept the fact that you also had fun while watching it, then what's the point? Like you're being a little too critical. And that's the thing with Renfield, is that it is not a perfect film. I've even heard, as I'm a blind film critic, so I can't personally use this in my grading system. I'm just going to address it. I've heard that this film has a persistent problem with the gore, and how it's a lot of it is CGI gore, and so none of it ever appears on people's clothing. Like frequently, other actors who are standing around the gore don't get covered in it. They just kind of, I guess, walk out like they're fresh and clean, and they're not just dripping with the person that just exploded. So, yeah, I mean, like it's kind of like it's a little lazy. I don't think this film had a massive budget. I can't imagine it did, but it's part of this campaign of things that Nicolas Cage should be doing. Like, he was in so many shitty films for so long, and we're finally getting him in better things. Like, casually, he'd pick up something along the way that people would get excited about, like Mandy, and then he did Pig. Um, and then Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and we're slowly rebuilding his career. I think Renfield is working towards that for him, and of course his vocal cameo in DC League of Super Pets. So, yeah, there are plenty of times where it works, and I'm excited for it. And then there are other times where I'm just like, oh my god, what is happening? I Then they gave Aquafina like a sister, and I just so didn't care. I was like, oh, she has a sister too. Oh, the sister works for the FBI, and I feel like they didn't really develop the sister, and the sister was just there to sort of like continue to ground this thing about like, oh, we lost our father and we're trying to avenge, but the sister wasn't really played well by anybody who was interesting. It was just kind of like, I'm the sister, and I was like, cool. Why are we here? This film is about this film is the Dracula film. It's just it goes into it way too much. It's fully invested in that plot line, and then it just throws Dracula into it. It's very bizarre. It would be like if we made a Jurassic Park film and suddenly Dracula was there, and like the film was really trying to make a Jurassic Park film, but then somebody was like, but Dracula's here, so you need to incorporate Dracula. It felt like somebody was really trying to make like a corrupt cop mob movie, and they were like, what if we made one with Dracula? Instead of thinking about what if we made a Dracula movie, I think they started off with, what if we made a corrupt cop movie and then added Dracula? You know, we get one of those is a dime a dozen. One of those concepts we get all the time in TV shows and movies. There are just tons of corrupt cop movies all over the place. And Dracula movies, sure, we've had a bunch, but nothing quite like this. It does feel tonally a little different, and Nicolas Cage is owning the shit out of this role. I think he probably wanted to seriously play Dracula at some point, like really attack this dramatically, but I think he's perfectly happy playing up the comedy of this role. He seems to really be enjoying himself, and when Nicolas Cage enjoys himself, it really brings a lot more to a film. So I'm really happy with the audio description here. It knows that the film is a horror comedy, and it absolutely lets you know when stuff is gory. It with body parts are being ripped off, it's letting you know. There's a scene where a guy literally just explodes, and it just mentions that like gore spills everywhere. Like, I mean, like, the whole body explodes, just torn open from the middle, and just goes everywhere. And it's described in as much detail as humanly possible without just being like, we look up at the ceiling and we see some intestines are hanging there, and over on the floor it looks to be the kidney, and I mean, it doesn't go in like that kind of level of detail, but enough to let you know shit went down. So yeah, it's this is definitely above average audio description for this film. I felt like it encapsulates and it tries to get Dracula's look in, because he has various stages of him being like okay, because he has to go through like healing processes of being fed people and regaining his strength, so he's not just like Nicolas Cage hot like the whole time. So and Nicholas Hoult makes a lot of interesting wardrobe choices throughout the film too that are pointed out. So there's plenty of stuff here that leads me to believe that I think this is above average audio description. So I'm really pretty happy about this. However, yeah, it's not perfect. The Tomorrow War was not perfect. Chris McKay needs to take a beat. He's got a lot of promise. I saw a lot of promise in the Tomorrow War. There's a lot of promise in Renfield. I think this guy could easily end up directing something that is fantastic. Even the Lego Batman movie, which might arguably be the best thing he's directed so far. But he has to be able to transition into live action, unless he just wants to be an animated director. So, yeah, it's a good film, and I recommend it. I would watch it again. I wouldn't rush out to watch it again, but I would. Some year down the line, I wouldn't mind watching this again. So, anyway, I'm gonna give Renfield a B. I think critics have been a little too hard on it. They're looking a little too deep at the mistakes and not embracing the comedy. It's sort of like Snakes on a Plane worked. It knew what it was. Don't overthink it. It was intentionally trying to do what everybody then was pointing out it was doing. Like, oh, this isn't a good film. It knows that, and that's what it was trying to do. That was the point of that film, was to be campy. The point of Renfield is very cheesy horror comedy, and it does that very well. So I just probably think there's a better script. So that's it. And thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I do have a website, MacTheMovieGuy.com. You can go to Twitter or Instagram and follow me at MacTheMovieGuy. You can go to the Audio Description Project, adp.acb.org. It'll let you know what has audio description, where you can watch it. And you can go to the ADNA.org. That's the ADNA.org. It'll let you know who is narrating your favorite films and television series. That's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this. I will review something else for you guys, and see you on the other side.